Hi there, my name is Ty Zander-Javancio. I am the Exhibitions, Events, and Outreach Coordinator at Pembina Hills Arts Council. Today, I am joined by Jan Jenkins, who is a poet, mixed media artist, printmaker, and painter from Dauphin, Manitoba. She has had an exhibition with us for the month of September entitled In the Wind. And today I have the distinct privilege of getting to discuss a little bit about her art practice, as well as the themes and imagery of the show itself. Hi, Jan, how are you?
I'm doing good, Ty. Thanks for inviting me to be here today.
And thanks for joining us. I'm just going to jump straight into some of the questions that I have here. My first question is if you could just tell us a little bit about the show that we have on right now.
Right, so In the Wind is based on a recurring dream that I had, and I wrote a poem about that dream and did my initial piece of artwork about that dream. And the dream has to do with lifting off the ground and flying over land towards new vistas. And I'm a little bit of a cautious person. So I think the dream meant for me to try to explore new horizons, put away my anxieties and caution, and be a little bit more exploratory in all facets of life, including my artwork. So that's the premise the show was based on. A part of the show, I was challenged to create a repeating pattern. So that was incorporated into the body of work as well. And it was fun going from a single inspiration or concept and then branching out into many different art forms that resulted from that.
So one of the things that I noticed about your work is that there is quite a big focus on kind of the process and the making of your work. Would you be able to kind of, in a little bit of detail, discuss from start to finish, how is a work conceived?
In this particular instance, it was inspired by the dream and the subsequent poem that I wrote. But simplistically, I end up doing some preliminary sketching. And so what I can do is just show you this, for example, is a preliminary sketch that I do, a rough. And from there, I end up, I lose all track of time. Sometimes I don't do the rough. Sometimes I just jump in with a pen and pencil. And it's based off of Zen doodling, which is an art form that I love to do. But from this rough idea, I end up coming up with something more complex, as you can see from that. And then what I love is color. And so everything changes when, for example, you add color. So that gives you a bit of an idea about the creative process that I go through, and then expressing it in different mediums, for example, lino cut or doing my pen and ink, that's one of my all-time favorites, or translating it into an oil pastel piece. And each of those have their own processes attached to them, but all of them are very soothing for me and very relaxing. And for me, that's what art needs to be, soothing and relaxing, because I tend to be a little bit of a high-strung, nervous person, so it kind of grounds and calms me.
Absolutely, that's very interesting, especially the soothing and relaxing, because I know in your statement you did kind of mention the concept of bringing order to chaos and uniting bits and pieces of fragmented reality, fragmented self. You see the same work done in a variety of mediums and in a variety of kind of different iterations. And so there's, in addition to there being kind of the repetition, there's also a slow evolution as well. And I was wondering if you might be able to discuss that in a little bit more detail.
My inspiration is the decorative patterning that you find in nature, which is a lot of repeat but diversity as well, on tiling, on the beautiful exotic textiles. Those are some of my inspirations for repeating patterns, and they have symbolism to them as well. So when I'm using a repeating subject matter or imagery that contains seeds and leaves and dragonflies, all of those those have symbolic meanings. That's part of my love of doing repetitive artwork, is including that symbolism, but also I love to make a piece visually pleasing, and that happens through a repetition of variety and a repetition of your subject matter, and it's almost like you're creating a dance of these different pieces, the visual imagery that's in your work. And in some of my work, I've actually started off, for example, with 3 or 4 just broad pencil lines, and that form that bit of a dance. And then from there, I can decide what's incorporated into that artwork. And so for Into the Wind, what I had done was I actually took my initial artwork, which I'll just quickly show you here. This is my initial artwork. I actually broke it up into a foreground and a background, and then had each of those become repeating patterns. And what I mean by repeating patterns is, if you take this and you turn it into a repeating pattern, if you fold it horizontally, it'll repeat. And if you fold it vertically, it'll repeat. And so then you end up with something that repeats and repeats and repeats. So part of the repeating is that dance, that visual imagery and dance. And I know for some folks it can be a bit too chaotic, but it's my way of turning the chaos around us into a beautiful visual dance that can be a bit mesmerizing. And as the creator, it gives me this calming, soothing, meditative approach to my artwork. I create art for me, and I'm so happy when other people enjoy it, but basically it's for me, it's for my well-being and my need to create.
That's really cool, especially what you just showed me, because I'd known that the works kind of repeated and certain elements were taken from one aspect of one kind of original design and blended together and kind of used to create a new kind of composition. But I hadn't realized where some of the elements were coming from, and just seeing you kind of like fold over that one piece there, and it's suddenly like I was like, oh, that's where it comes from. I think that's really cool. It kind of again speaks to your statement, because it mentions nature, the universe's unspoken order within the chaos and the order out of the chaos.
And within nature, the interconnectedness, it looks chaotic to us as human beings, but the reliance, the dependency, and the interconnection on all these components for the survival of species, that's really important as well. So it may look chaotic to us, but Mother Nature knows what she's doing. And I just love how there is this unity in all this diversity, and how there's this beauty that comes out of all this disorder and variety. If you take the time to look at it, most of us walk down a forest path and we don't even take a minute to stand there and just look down and see all the beautiful design work that is in front of us. And that's truly inspirational for me. Mm-hmm.
I was really fascinated learning that this concept had kind of come from a recurring dream that you were having. And even more so to learn one of the elements of your process, in addition to creating the images, you'll go in afterwards and kind of expand on them, looking at kind of like the dream meanings of some of the symbols, some of the colors that are being used as you're doing these meditative artworks. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that and how that works, and maybe even how that might progress in the future with your work and what else you might do with that.
Yes, I've actually always been interested in dream interpretation and symbolism. And it's one of my greatest joys when I'm creating something is to actually, thank goodness for Google, is to look up and research the items. And sometimes it's intuitive. I want to include these items, and I look up the symbols afterwards, and that kind of gives me, there's a story behind what I'm creating here that subconsciously I may not be aware of, but subconsciously I'm creating this story with the content that I'm putting into my artwork. And so that's been a really fun part of it for me. And then as a poet, to be able to take my visual imagery and either create poetry from it or vice versa, have my poetry inspire my work, I mean, that's wonderful too. It's all a learning process for me, and sometimes the steps I take from one project to another kind of reverse themselves. But part of my exploration with these different art forms using the same subject matter is finding out how different colors or textures or atmospheres change the impression or the feeling about the artwork. You know, using watercolor batik, you get something very atmospheric and very 3D. And using lino cut, you get something that's a lot more textile type patterning with the way that I do lino cut anyway. And then how the colors impact your emotional reaction to the artworks as well. So
you've made some of your prints into wallpaper, as well as transfer them onto scarves and t-shirts and other clothes. I believe you have a couple websites where users, if they are interested, can find your work to purchase online. I was wondering how you felt about that kind of aspect of your work.
When it came to In the Wind, it was my first time working with repeating patterns. And I decided that part of the exhibition, I wanted to create scarves and other items with repeating patterns. For example, I'll just show you this one here. And that's a learning process in and of itself. That's a square scarf. And what a great way, especially during the last few years, I've had the chance to be able to focus on my art. It's keeping me mentally engaged in saying, well, what else can I do with this piece of art? I've got a lovely scanner here that I can do high quality scans of my work as long as it's within a certain size. I live in a very, very small house, and therefore taking my art to the next level as far as going big, it's an unrealistic expectation for me. So I thought, well, what if I created these products and I created artwork in smaller pieces that can be hung side by side to create a larger piece, or I can scan these smaller pieces of artwork and digitally using different software, I can create these repeating patterns. And then what can I do with these? So I've been having a lot of fun. The one great thing about print on demand is it doesn't cost me anything to play around. I can order what I feel like ordering and wear it, like this top that I'm wearing. I did that from some jelly plate prints. And so that's been a lot of fun. And I find that, I guess you can call it passive income, because what artist actually sells enough of their artwork, unless they're very famous, to be able to actually make a living at it, And so I thought, well, this is some way functional art, I guess you would call it. And functional art has always been something that I have also been interested in. Because I live in such a small house, everything does have to have a purpose. And you can only hang so many pictures on a wall, right? Well, I've got shelves that I had built in my studio so that I could have a lot more art up here. But not everybody wants that much art hanging on their walls. So, yeah.
And this might be a bit more of a tricky question. Do you think that the commercial aspect takes away from the conceptual elements or kind of from the fine art aspects of your work?
That's a good question, Ty. And perhaps it's because I don't have the confidence yet to say that I am creating masterpieces that command larger sums of money, where those collectors would be concerned about having their work copied and converted into functional art. So I am pretty selective as to what pieces I do use for this process. And for example, the lino cuts, the only exception for print on demand I made was for this show, simply because it was part of this show. The rest of my lino cuts they're sold just as lino cuts. My pen and ink work, that I've turned into functional art for two reasons. Number one, I love using alcohol ink markers, but they're not light fast. And so I don't feel comfortable selling the artwork that's not going to stay to those colors that the viewer initially thought they were getting. So I have since switched over to trying to use acrylic inks. Don't quite get the same smooth, beautiful vibrancy that the alcohol inks provide, but it's all an experiment. And also with the oil pastels, I don't sell any functional print on demand with those either. This one based on an oil pastel. This was pretty much done for the Into the Wind show, and just the long ones ended up going into the exhibit. I did have some square ones as well, but they were too unwieldy to include in the exhibit. So,
how has the pandemic affected your artistic practice?
I would have to say that because I can tend to be a bit of an anxious person, that the uncertainty of everything that's happened with the pandemic really did a number on me. Just the uncertainty and the chaos. And yes, I know my artwork's all about chaos, but it's the kind of chaos I can control. And this I could not. So I found it hard to focus. So I went back through some of my sketches and my drafts, and I played around with those. I am actually working on a new body of work in conjunction with an art group I've recently joined. So that's got me motivated, and learning how to do handmade paper making is part of it. And that's the only little secret I'll give away at this point in time.
So that kind of leads me to my next question, which was, are there any future projects or exhibitions that you have coming up that you would like to share with us?
I do have a show right now, a solo show at the Dauphin Library, and it's called Embracing Exploration. It is a retrospective, so not necessarily a cohesive body of work like Into the Wind is. And I'm touring that around some libraries. And then this body of work that I'm working on right now, it's a year-long project, and that I will be hoping to have in exhibition mode with the group that I've joined next year. And perhaps there will be some spin-offs from that will become solo shows as well. I'm in the middle. I'm being a very enthusiastic start to a new body of work.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure getting to talk a little bit more about your work, getting to know you as an artist. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ty. And I would like to say thank you also to Manitoba Arts Network for supporting artists with their touring exhibition program, and also in the other ways that they provide support to artists. It's just been an incredible experience being part of the Manitoba Art Network programming over the last couple of years.
I will put the links to Jan's social media and website as well in the links. Be sure to check out those if you are interested in getting in touch with the artist, or if you'd like any more information on upcoming shows, or if you would like to check out retail websites to see if you might purchase some of the prints featured here today or on the website. That is all from us. Thank you so much again, and I hope you have a really good rest of your day. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.